Okay, this is the video that you've been requesting. Apparently you all like the sound of my voice, or at least you like the commentary. So here's the commentary of the last 5 laps. We've just gone through the start-finish area. 5 laps to go. Now, I thought I would just pull up these last 5 laps because obviously like a lot happens in the last 5 laps. There's 5 of us in the breakaway. We've been in the breakaway for pretty much the whole race. We've been pulling even turns, like probably 20-second turns each up until this point, mainly for me at least around the 380 watt mark. I'd say we'd all been fairly equal in the work we've been doing. So up until this point we'd done about 25k in 32 minutes, so about 46k an hour average, and normalized power of 322, and hardly any spikes in power at all, to be honest. So to be honest, the race has been quite easy for me up to this point because I'm an aerobic engine, so being in a breakaway suits me. This is the part of the race that obviously gets a little bit tricky because not only is it tactical, but it also comes down to you've got to follow the wheels. So the last 5 laps were a little bit of what you'd see on TV, like there's a lot of cat and mouse. So we've got 2 Welsh Racing Academy riders in this group, and we've got 1 rider from PB Performance, and then we've got 1 rider from Cafe Griff who's right in front of me. So Cafe Griff, PB Performance, and then the 2 Welsh guys just in front, at the front. So the way I didn't know how the race was going to end. You would think that with strength in numbers, the Welsh boys may try the old one to attack. But because there's 3 of us who aren't racing for teams together, then we are very likely going to jump on their moves. So 2 versus 3 doesn't quite work out, but that won't stop them. So we're coming up to 4 laps to go now, and I want to pick up on a couple of things. I'm sure you're going to pick up on things as well in these last couple of laps. You're going to pick up on where riders spent their energy, where they could have attacked, where they could have saved energy, all these sorts of things. First rider attacks, hits us on a pretty fast section of the course, which unless you're going that much faster, obviously it's very hard to close the gap. It does take us a while to close the gap, and I lose the wheel here. That was mainly down to my cornering because it did start to rain. So it takes us a while to get back to this Welsh Academy rider. Now as soon as we get back, I'm thinking, right, the other one is going to come straight over the top. But that doesn't happen. So instead, we fan across the road and we're sitting, we're looking, we're doing the usual. You can imagine, like, in this situation, you're like, right, who's next? Who's next? Who's going to throw the next punch? There's the bunch on the right hand side of the road. They're like almost half a lap down. So someone commented on the last video saying that like they got a little bit worried because we were playing around so much in the final that someone might have, or the bunch might have caught back up with us, but that wasn't the case. So what you see here in the last couple of laps is actually us being able to race without sort of needing to worry about being caught. So every lap, of course, we hit this little climb, which is a bit of a, it's a bit of a sting in the tail. But we're still looking at each other until this move goes, which I feel like I have to close anyway because we're about to go downhill. We're about to go into a tailwind, so I decided to close it. I felt like if I looked around for a split second, then 2 of these guys would have got away, and then potentially we wouldn't have seen them again because we're about to come up to 3 laps to go. A lap lasts probably in the region of like 2.5 to 3 minutes, so it's long enough. This little move here, I'm not quite sure what's happening because obviously it was a move off the front and it's quite easy to react to, but later I did find out after the race that the dude in front of me had done a big old training ride before doing this race, so this was actually part of his training. So that's something that you don't necessarily, I guess, hear. It's quite a common thing, especially for the more elite riders. They often train in the morning and then they do the race, or in this case he trained like literally to the race, and then did the race as his sort of final part of his ride. So I've got a couple of things to whiz through. My best 1 minute power in this race actually came early on, where I did 487 watts, like super early in the race. That was to form the breakaway. And my best 30-second power actually came in that same moment when we formed the breakaway. So the last couple of laps, I don't make any massive efforts, apart from the one that you've just seen, obviously. That I only made that effort because, and you can't see behind, and I will hopefully get a rear-facing camera for next year. But I did have a small glance, and there was a very small chance that I may have caught the riders napping, and I might have got a gap. The thing is, you might only need like, you know, a 2 or 3 second gap. 2 or 3 bike length gap, and you're able to capitalize on it. So the trick was to not make it look like I was attacking from the front, but to more do like a power creep, or at least, yeah, that's what I'm calling it. So like you stay in the saddle, you gradually creep up the power, and then as soon as you think you've got a gap, then you snap and you sprint, because, you know, by that time you've got the gap, and then it's going to take them longer to get back to you. However, that didn't work. So they go straight back to me, but I got caught at the bottom of that hill. But instead of totally easing up, I actually kept the power on over the top, because I didn't want myself to stall going into the bottom of it, and then them basically going over the top of me and attacking me while I was going at my slowest. So when I came over the top, and you've just seen we've come down the other side, there was an attack over the top again. I reacted to it without hesitating. I think I can be really proud of how I rode these last 5 laps, because there was only once that I made a move, and although me attacking is probably the only way potentially I could win and go in solo, also don't underestimate my sprint, which I always do. I always underestimate my own sprint. You know, just because, you know, a guy's a sprinter, don't think that like at the end of a hard race where you've been in a breakaway for 45-50 minutes like we have, that, you know, it brings everyone to an equal or level playing field. So I didn't actually attack, apart from that one time where I just creeped off the front with about 3 laps to go. I didn't actually make a full-on move, and yet there was a couple of times where moves would go in and you were thinking like, well, this is quite easy to get onto. Like, the speed is so high that it does make it very difficult to get away, and that's even just with the 5 of us, because there's always somebody there to jump on. I think if there was 3 of us in the breakaway, you'd notice it'd be maybe a fair bit more difficult, because you're always going to be looking at each other. But I'm happy with the way I rode the final few laps, in a sense that I felt like I could react to everything, and I also feel like, to a certain extent, people knew that they weren't going to go anywhere, so there wasn't full commitment to actually attacking. I was fully committed to a sprint, because I'm always excited to see what I can do in a sprint, but I was also fully committed to following moves. So like when this move goes over the top of the climb here, as we're coming up to the last lap, you know, I don't look around and wait for the other 2 to chase. I just jump on it myself. You know, there's no hesitation almost. So yeah, I can't think of anything else to say right now, because I'm too busy enjoying watching the footage again. But if there's any questions you've got, then leave them down below. Like, I'm by no means an expert in crit racing, although I've done a fair share of them in my time. It's not something that I have like a ton of experience at winning. So we come around, you've seen it enough times now, you can see that last bend there. It's a right-hander, and then it straightens up for the finisher. Attacking from the front is, in my opinion, like a little bit sort of like desperate, because really you need the element of surprise, especially if we're moving quite fast. Like, we're hardly pedaling and we're doing like 40 kilometers an hour. Now the final lap, it's much the same as like the second to last lap, only around about this point the Welsh cycling team come through and they just sit on the front. And so there's one rider who, the rider that's on the front right now, who's done a training ride and is finishing here, like finishing his training session here tonight. And the rider behind him on his wheel, I assume, is going to be the sprinter. So, just by power deduction. Call me Sherlock. So what we have now is basically a lead out. And at the time I thought to myself, like, in this moment right now, I was like, well, this can't be it. Like, this isn't going to be as simple as they're just going to ride to the line. But, oh, how wrong I was. I thought there was going to be some sort of an attack going up this climb for the last time. But it's always difficult there, because then you've got like a good 40-second effort to make. You've got to fully commit, basically, to that effort. So it's somewhere that I could have gone potentially here, but I didn't. Instead, I sat on the back of this group of, well, 5, and just watched and waited and learned. Like, I learn a lot by obviously sitting in the back here. You learn that patience is hugely effective, and you will see what I mean right now. So I'm sat at the back. I've now got the benefit of 4 riders in front of me, but not just that, I've got the benefit of 2 riders who are fighting for one wheel in front of me. So they're cutting into the wind from 2 sides, and I'm getting full effect. I do have to make one little effort here to stay on the wheel, but it's very little. We're moving at such a speed now that actually I'm almost freewheeling into the back of them, or at least that's what it feels like. We take this little kink, and immediately the sprint opens up, and the Welsh guy just launches and gets a gap. So now it's a sprint between us 2 as you see us come around the bend. But I wait. I'm obviously, like, I'm in the saddle, but I'm sprinting 700 watts, and then I launch like now. And I go for the gap, which is closing really quick. I knew it was going to be close, but yeah, I totally enjoyed the race. I enjoyed the finish. I enjoyed sprinting. The bike was crazy quick. It felt like so quick under me when I was sprinting. But I really, really enjoyed the race. Really enjoyed the sprint, and almost cracked 1,000 watts. So what more can I say?